I pray that God's words be spoken and God's words heard. Amen. So I hope you found that little experiment of processing in with candles, those of you who did that, to be a fun little shake-up in February of something to do. It's the feast of the presentation of Jesus in the temple, sometimes called Candlemas because it was the day, back when we only lit worship spaces or homes with candles. It would be the day that we would bless our altar candles, and parishioners would bring candles from home that the priest would bless, so that in the darkness of winter, you would remember that Jesus, who is light to the world, is in you and is in your home, that light overcomes darkness, right? And so they would have this beautiful Candlemas, this literally candle mass, a service for candles, remembering the light of Christ. And they thought the best time to do that was 40 days after Christmas Day, which is February 2nd. Yeah, like the 40 days of Lent, or the 40 days Jesus spent in the wilderness, or the 40 years, you get it. Numbers are important, right? So that's why it's not Groundhog Day, it's Candlemas Day. Or the presentation of Jesus, that's the gospel reading that we have. And in the life of the church, I kind of forgot this, but in the life of the church, this is one of our principal feast days that we're supposed to celebrate no matter what. Every February 2nd, we're supposed to have Candlemas and celebrate the presentation of Jesus in the temple. But we don't do it. You're supposed to, if February 2nd falls on a Tuesday and we don't come to church on Tuesday, we're supposed to move it to the closest Sunday, like we do with Epiphany. But we don't, And I think we do that. We kind of forget that it's an important day in the life of the church because we don't need candles anymore to read by. Like, that's why this is here, right? So the priest can read. Because we've got electricity. So we forget that the gift of light is powerful, right? And I think we don't normally hear this chapter in Luke, this story of the presentation, also kind of sometimes called the purification of Mary, right? Yeah. Danielle's face went, what? What? A woman needs to be purified after childbirth? Are we still doing that? Right? Because like our modern brains, we don't think that bodily fluids make us impure, right? Or dirty in some way, right? So we kind of forget this altogether. And the presentation of Jesus part too, we forget about that. The Jewish firstborn males are to be dedicated to God because of the Passover, right? If you remember the story of when the Israelites were still in Egypt, and Moses, the prophet, was trying to get them free, and Pharaoh kept saying no, so God would send another plague, and it was frogs, and the river of blood, and it was locusts, and the last one, the 10th one, was the death of every firstborn male, human and animal, right? It was good news for the Israelites. It was less good news for the Egyptians. And the Israelites were saved by the blood of the Lamb, right? Lamb is up there in our stained glass window. Jesus, the Lamb of God, right? Israelites were saved by the blood of the Lamb that they sacrificed in honor to God and put on the doorposts, so that when the angel of God passed over the house, the males in that house would be saved. And as a remembrance to that holy time of when God moved powerfully in the life of the Israelites, from then on, every firstborn male would need to be presented in the temple and dedicated to God, and an offering made to God. And while you may be thinking, that sounds kind of strange, we do the same thing with our baptism, don't we? We bring our babies to be dedicated to God, to be reminded that they're baptized into the death and resurrection of Christ, to be reminded that we're grounded in God. So Mary and Joseph, they didn't come and do these things because they had to, because they were made to. Mary, who was told by Gabriel that she is blessed among women, did not come because she thought, I am dirty and unclean, right? She did not believe childbirth made her dirty. Certainly not the birth of God's son, right? God does not think childbirth is unclean, right? Because I think if he did, he would have had Jesus spring from foam like the way Aphrodite did, or Athena coming out of the forehead of Zeus. That's a weird one, right? No, Jesus was literally through the birth canal, birthed human flesh. That's not dirty, right? Mary didn't do that because come for her purification for that reason. She came because she was faithful. And she knew that grounded in her faith, we do practices that remind us, that ground us, that bless us. And so that's why Mary and Joseph were there that day, 40 days after Jesus was born, right? The other thing that's so interesting, too, I love how Luke ends it. And he just doesn't end it with Anna said some nice things, right? He ends it with the parents, the family went back to Galilee, to Nazareth, their hometown. Right? That the Holy Family are not just individuals, but they're people of a community. Right? That community was also there in the temple that day, right? Simeon was there, Anna, other people. And if you don't think that Mary and Joseph trusted in the community around them, you've not been a mother of a 40-day-old baby who some random man picks him up and says, "Blessed are you, baby," right? You ever do that, Danielle? No, never, right? Any of us. Strange man grabs our baby at church, we're going to be like, "Hey there," right? No, they trusted because they were part of a community, not individuals, but a community. But too often, I think it's hard for us, Americans, 21st century, right, to wrap our minds around these different notions of and rhythms of life, of religious, spiritual life in a community. Because we've been sold something that's a lie. God created us for connection, for community. It's literally right there in the first stories of Genesis, right? We have two creation stories. In the first, God created male and female. In God's image, God created them together for community. In the image of God, who is God's self, community of three, right? Created for connection. In the second creation story, that's the one where we get the Garden of Eden stuff, right? At first, God just creates Adam, just creates a human male. And Adam is lonely, that story tells us. He has all of creation, everything he needs. He's got a dog who loves him, follows him around, right? It's still not enough. So God creates woman to be partner, community, love, connection to Adam. That's what God created us for. Mary and Joseph knew that, right? They knew that in their village of Nazareth, that they had a community around them who would celebrate their triumphs and cry at their trials. Right? And we used to know that too. Our society used to know that. Villages were ones that lifted each other up, knew all your secrets, which can be bad, but also knew when you were struggling and bring you a casserole, right? I love reading cozy mysteries, like Lewis Penny's Three Pine Mystery, set in this beautiful little village. So much murder happens in this little village, but those people, they know each other. They have dinner together most nights, or coffee in the bistro, and they're holding each other up, and it doesn't matter what happens. They are there for each other. Church used to be like that. Many of you are old enough to remember when church pews were filled, right? I'm so glad you guys are here today, right? We still are community. We still hold each other up. But somewhere along the lines, and I think it was probably around the 60s, we started to be sold a lie of independence, of self-sufficiency, of being on your own. And I think one of the places it might have come from is one of the most successful ad campaigns ever for the Marlboro Man. You remember the Marlboro Man? I remember the Marlboro Man commercials, right? Or posters, that very like tough, rugged, I don't need nobody individual, right? He's like leaning against a barn, cowboy hat tipped down, cigarette from his mouth. Is there anybody else in that picture with him? No. Why? I don't need nobody. I'm a Marlboro Man, right? I can do it myself. I'm strong. I'm smart. I can survive. I don't need any of you. And we started to believe it. We started to buy into it. We started to buy an image of individuality that God did not create us for. And I'm not saying we can't be individuals. We are each unique individuals in our experience, but we need connection. I love my social media, probably more than I should, right? But it too sells us a false sense of community. Okay? Through my Facebook, I can keep in touch with my best friend, Mike, who I've been best friends with since I was 4, right? Or my other best friends from high school. They all live in Minnesota. I don't get to see their day-to-day life, but I can see what they ate for dinner if they post a picture on Facebook, right? Or I can see that their kid just got an award, and I'm grateful for that. But we falsely bought into that, thinking that that is the same thing as face-to-face connection. And what has happened is our society thinks we're more connected and we're more fragmented, right? We've bought into this idea that we don't need each other. And it's so sad. Because what has happened in the last several decades, 40 years, which is before social media, not blaming it all on that. But we bought into this idea that we can do it on our own. Okay? Our family houses have gotten bigger as we've gotten less close to our neighbors. Okay? We don't live in multi-generational households anymore, most of us. Okay? Because we figure we don't need our moms to help us with our kids. We can do it on our own, or our cousins, right? But that's not what God created us for. God wants us to be in connection. Our anxiety has increased, our fear has increased, our divisions have increased, our isolation has increased, and we've all become noisy gongs, right? as Paul writes about in the first letter to the Corinthians. Right? A chapter maybe 90% of those who got married in a church had that passage, right? Love is faithful, love is kind, right? It's not about married love. It's nice for that too, but it's not. It's about communal love. It's about the love that we are supposed to have for each other that we don't. The Corinthians didn't have it. That's why Paul wrote that letter to them. They were divided into separate camps. And he says, all your yelling and your rhetoric is a noisy gong. We need love. We need each other. A couple of weeks ago, I was listening to a podcast. Does anybody else listen to the Hidden Brain podcast? Anne? Oh, yeah, I bet you would, huh? It's fantastic. Anybody who listens to podcasts, go home, listen to some episodes. Maybe I'll post the link for this one somewhere because it was fascinating. Hidden Brain, it's like a podcast about being people. I mean, really, it's about, psychology and sociology and connection and how to be our best selves. And this podcast was called The Gift of Others. Wow, I was like, well, that's bold, right? Because how many times do we look at other people and we're like, you're a gift? I mean, I look at you and think that, right? But I don't look at the person sitting in the airplane seat like this, taking my armrest. I don't look at him and go, you're a gift. I'm like, give me back my armrest, right? The gift of other people. And the speaker on that show, his name is Nicholas Epley. He studies how to encourage people to be more connected. Right? And he actually said it was kind of funny that he was literally writing a chapter in a book about that we are better, we are happier, we feel good, we have better self-esteem, when we talk to each other. When strangers talk to each other, we feel better about ourselves. He's literally writing a chapter about this. Gets on his morning commuter train and immediately pulls out his phone and starts reading news, scrolling, ignoring the 20 people around him in the commuter train. And he went, oh, why aren't I living what I'm writing about? So he started with an experiment of one, just himself, and then expanded it to encourage people to study people talking to a stranger. How many of you like to go up to a perfect stranger and have a conversation? Show of hands. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some of you. Actually, those of you who raise your hands are the ones I would assume, right? The rest of you are all like, hell no, I'm never doing that, right? Like if I said your homework this week is to go find a single person sitting by themselves at Starbucks and strike up a conversation, none of you would do it, right? Why? You're afraid to, right? Makes you feel anxious, awkward, right? What if they reject me? Rejection sucks. I don't want to do that. I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to be that annoying person who jabbers on for 29 minutes about their toe surgery, right? So we don't do it. And so as Nicholas Epley has been studying this, he encourages people, if you talk to somebody on your commuter train, you'll get a $5 gift card at Starbucks. Just send back this survey. And he would ask people, how likely do you think that stranger will talk to you on the train, right? They figured 80% of the time, the person's going to get ignored, right? Pick up their coffee and move somewhere else. I'm going to move away from Jerry because he's trying to have a conversation with me on the train, right? The actual opposite is true, right? If you engage in conversation with a stranger, and we're not talking 29 minutes, we're talking like 4, right? 80% of the time, that stranger will have a conversation with you, right? So our fear of being rejected or of being awkward or horrible is wrong. It's also a lie that we've been sold. So Nicholas thought, well, maybe the commuters around Chicago, where he was doing this study, maybe they're Midwestern. Maybe they're Midwestern nice, right? Let's take this on the road. Let's go to one of the least friendly cities in the world. Oh, New York would be good. London, though. London, right? They're polite, but they don't want to have any interaction with you. Right? In fact, a number of years ago, a guy named Jonathan, on his commute on the tube in London, thought, we need to talk. There's a lot of division in the country, and I think if we just realize that we're all human beings, being human, that the world will be a better place. So he started a campaign called #TubeChat. #TubeChat. He passed out buttons, he created an Instagram, a Facebook page. Do you know what happened? London rebelled. They refused to do it. They were like, we would rather drink bleach than talk to strangers. There were #ShutUpTubeTalk. Right? They wouldn't do it. So Nicholas Epley, he takes his study there to London to see how they're going to respond, right? He had the same results, these positive results. People thought 80% of the time, the stranger won't talk to me. And he found that was wrong. They talked. Londoners are human too, right? They're also built for connection. When we have conversations with strangers or people we don't know so well, our mood changes. We feel happier, we feel more content, we feel more at peace, we feel more engaged, we feel more connected. And that's what we're called to do. And we have new people here at St. John's, right? Or maybe they're old people here and you just don't know them that well. And you should just go up and talk to them, right? In a society that seems like we're fragmenting further and further and further away, let us move in love with people. Let us talk to each other. Not small talk, but really connecting with each other. I think if you do that, you will feel more hopeful, less fearful, more positive, less anxious, right? More full of love, less full of fear. Let us really be a church of welcome and connection and belonging this year.